I had seen Isabella with my own eyes, cradling another man's child and whispering to her friend to keep me away from the hospital room. Yet, I still sat in that cafe, smiling as I congratulated her on finally becoming a mother. When she tried to see if I still loved her, I simply told her our past was nothing more than kids playing house. I even flipped the script, sliding an investment proposal across the table to borrow $100,000 from her. As she signed that contract out of a mix of guilt and relief, I was already mentally earmarking that cash as my first bet for a massive short position. To me, she was no longer a lingering regret from my youth, but a vital pawn in a high-stakes game. My childhood friend was pregnant, and the father was my supposed best friend. It was a celebration, but they had not bothered to save a seat for me at the table. My name was Davis Thorne, a programmer who had worked himself into an early grave. I snapped my eyes open only to realize I had been reincarnated as the tragic lead in some trashy romance novel. I was inhabiting a new body now, still named Davis Thorne. I was the ultimate utility player, a guy whose first love and best friend had drained his heart and his bank account. My first love was Isabella Hayes, and my best friend was Leo Reed. To hell with the original plot. The old Davis was a pushover who let people walk all over him until the day he died, never even dreaming of revenge. But I'm not that soft. This body belongs to me now. Isabella just gave birth to Leo's baby and thought she could keep me in the dark, playing the innocent victim while planning their wedding. Wait, that is not right. Technically, Isabella and I never even officially dated. It is hard to call it cheating if we were never together. Maybe I should just let go? Like hell I will. From this moment on, I have only 3 goals. Make money, and make even more damn money. You heard me right. I'm going to get filthy rich. But just as I was preparing to short the Hayes Group into total bankruptcy, something changed. Wait, what did you say? The baby is not even Leo's? What kind of insane plot twist is this? I glanced at the time on my phone. August 14th, 2023 at 11:14 a.m. My head felt like it was about to explode. I looked up at the woman in the hospital bed, carefully cradling a newborn. 3 minutes ago, I was a programmer pulling a 72-hour shift. I had literally dropped dead over my keyboard from exhaustion. The next second, I was standing in a hospital hallway, clutching a freshly printed medical report. A conversation, strange yet vaguely familiar, echoed in my ears. The voices grew clearer by the second. Isabella, you cannot keep this a total secret, a voice said. What happens when Davis gets back? He's going to find out eventually. Then let him find out, Isabella replied. If he asks, I will tell him the truth. I'm just worried that if he knows too soon, he will make a scene and cause trouble. As soon as she finished speaking, I looked down at the name on the lab report in my hand, Davis Thorne. Suddenly, a flood of memories that did not belong to me surged into my brain like a broken dam. I had been reborn into that trashy novel I was reading before I died. It was that garbage story where 10 years of devotion went down the drain. Now, I was the protagonist, the sucker who got backstabbed by Isabella Hayes and his best friend Leo Reed. I was the weak, pathetic lead who did nothing but cry about his problems. Holy shit, I muttered under my breath, immediately drawing judgmental glares from the nurse's station. The original Davis Thorne had been adopted by the Hayes family when he was 10. For the next decade, he had been secretly in love with their daughter, Isabella. A year ago, Isabella convinced him to go abroad for his studies, promising they would officially be together when he returned. The idiot barely got on the plane before she hopped into bed with his best friend, Leo. Now, the baby was already born. Memories kept flooding in as I rubbed my temples, trying to process this disaster. The worst part was the original ending of the book. Davis found out the truth and chose to leave quietly, eventually dying from a deep depression. Meanwhile, Isabella and Leo took over the Hayes Group and lived a perfect, successful life together. Seriously, man, you fell apart over this? I mocked the original owner of this body in my head. She was never even your girlfriend. She did not like you. She dated someone else. How is that even a betrayal? You call this being cheated on? If this level of drama hurts you this much, you are a pathetic excuse for a protagonist. I frowned and stretched my new limbs, my eyes falling on the back of the medical report. There was a small note scribbled on the back. Suspected malignant stomach tumor. Further testing recommended. I almost laughed out loud. You actually worried yourself into a potential cancer diagnosis? It was just a suspected case, a minor problem I could handle. Suddenly, the hospital door swung open and a woman wearing heavy makeup stepped out. She froze the moment our eyes met. Davis? When did you get back? She asked. According to my new memories, this was Isabella's best friend, Mia. I waved the medical report at her. I just got off the plane, I said. I had a bit of fever, so I stopped by the hospital on my way home. I glanced toward the room. Is Isabella in there? Is she feeling okay? Mia panicked, quickly moving to block the doorway. No, it is nothing, just a routine checkup, she stammered. Through the gap in the door, I saw a woman in a hospital gown sitting on the bed, holding a wrinkled newborn. A man in a suit stood beside her, carefully preparing a bottle of formula. I recognized that face instantly. Leo. Man, the cliches in this novel really did not disappoint. They actually managed to hide a whole pregnancy until the baby was born. It was impressive in a pathetic way. I pretended I had seen nothing, putting on a look of deep concern. I will go in and say hi, I suggested. Don't. Mia grabbed my arm. She's having a gynecological exam right now. It is not a good time. I sneered internally, but nodded politely. Fine, just tell her I am back. As I turned to leave, I heard a hushed voice from inside the room. Is he gone? Whatever you do not let him know I had the baby. Outside, the August sun was brutal. I sat on the edge of a planter and emptied my pockets. Wallet, phone, keys. The lock screen was a photo of Isabella with the caption, My Isabella. Simps never end up well. I sighed, deleting the photo. I opened the Chase mobile app to check my balance. It showed $275,804.50. Not a bad number, I thought. In the original Davis's memory, he felt like he was starving, but the reality was much better. It was enough for now. I scrolled through my contacts to Mr. Hayes and hit dial. Davis, the man's surprised voice came through. You're back in the States? Yes, sir, I said, keeping my voice low. I just saw Isabella at the hospital. There was a long silence. So, you know everything? Mr. Hayes asked tentatively. Yes, I replied, forcing a slight sob into my voice. I saw the baby too. She is beautiful. Oh, Davis, he sighed. Isabella handled this poorly, but the baby is here now. You have to understand. I cut him off. Sir, I need to come by the house to pick up some of my things. Is now a good time? Half an hour later, I stood before the Hayes estate. It was a massive 3-story house with a garden and a pool. In this part of Chicago, it was worth at least 8 figures. In the novel, Mr. Hayes was actually decent to Davis. He was not the typical billionaire dad who spoiled his kid, and he had no intention of leaving the inheritance to him. It was rare to find a normal rich guy in a world this twisted. The normal things were treated as strange, and the insane things were treated as normal. Master Davis, the housekeeper, Maria, looked shocked. I just missed home, I said, smiling as I walked past her. In the living room, servants were busy packing wedding favors next to a stack of gold-embossed invitations. They read, Isabella Hayes Leo Reed, dated for the 18th of next month. Mr. Hayes came downstairs, his eyes lighting up when he saw me. Davis. I looked at the man who had been the kindest to me in my memories. He was in his 50s with graying hair, and his joy at seeing me was genuine. I noticed his right hand was trembling slightly. Parkinson's? Interesting detail. You are back just in time, he said, pulling me to the sofa. He pointed to the wedding gifts. Isabella is getting married next month to your friend Leo. They actually already have a daughter. I widened my eyes, putting on a perfect performance of a heartbroken man whose world had just ended. So, Isabella and Leo. Mr. Hayes realized he had said too much and slapped his forehead. You didn't know? I thought she told you. I see, I said, forcing a bitter smile as I stood up. Mr. Hayes, I just remembered I have some things to handle at school. I should go. He followed me to the door, telling me not to take it to heart. I am fine, I said with watery eyes. I wish them the best. The moment I stepped outside, my devastated expression vanished. I pulled out my phone to check the Hayes Group stock price. The current market cap was $1.2 billion with a PE ratio of 23. Once the wedding was officially announced, the stock would likely see another bump. I narrowed my eyes, noticing a small press release about a new energy project led by Leo Reed. According to the novel, this project was a shell company used to embezzle $3 million. This was the perfect opening for a short position. This was getting interesting. I could definitely use this to make a killing. As for romance, please, I was not the old Davis. With enough money, I could have anyone I wanted. As I was planning my move, my phone buzzed. An iMessage popped up with a frowning emoji. Davis, do you have time tomorrow? We need to talk. From my Isabella. I replied with the same emoji. I have time. I have things to say to you too, Isabella. I looked back at the mansion and saw Mr. Hayes watching me from behind a curtain. He quickly closed it when he saw me looking. Interesting, I thought. It seemed the old man knew more than he let on. In this world of NPCs, he might be the only real person. He was like a rare character living among cardboard cutouts. I booked a hotel nearby to sync the novel's plot with reality. Davis Thorne's life was a total tragedy. Orphaned at 10, in love at 18, tricked into going abroad at 22. He returned at 23 only to realize he had been a puppet his whole life. By 25, he was dead from cancer. I looked in the bathroom mirror and saw a face that was sharper and more handsome than I expected. He had a strong brow and a straight nose, though he looked a bit too gloomy. He looked exactly like a tragic lead from a soap opera. I logged in my E-Trade account and found $5,000 worth of Hayes Group stock. What a loyal dog he was. I liquidated the position immediately and applied for margin trading. Shorting your own family's company felt amazing. At 8 p.m., I posted an Instagram story, back in States. Time for a new chapter. I used a photo from the airport, but tagged the Hayes estate as my location. Within 10 minutes, Isabella called. I let it ring 7 times before answering. Davis, she said, her voice sweet and cloying. Why did you go to the house without telling me? I put her on speaker while eating instant noodles. Maybe I just missed you, I said. She laughed awkwardly and offered to buy me dinner. No thanks, I said, taking a bite of noodles. I heard you were getting married. Congratulations. Who told you that? She asked. Mr. Hayes. He also mentioned the baby. I made my voice sound wounded. Isabella, you promised you would wait for me so we could be together. She sighed after a long pause. Davis, that was just talk. We were kids, and the age gap was too big. Leo is only 2 years older than me. So he is different, right? I countered. Her voice spiked before she calmed down. I just mean Leo is mature. Whatever, I interrupted. Meet me at the Peninsula Cafe tomorrow at noon. After hanging up, I used Davis's hacking skills to dig into Leo Reed. Davis's hacking skills were actually quite useful. Digging up dirt on Leo was as easy as tracking a package. It turned out my best friend was even worse than I thought. Besides embezzling company funds, he owed a fortune to Las Vegas loan sharks and was desperate for cash. This was perfect. I felt zero guilt. If you're wondering if I would still do this if Leo were a good guy, the answer is yes. My only goal was to get rich. This is a gift from heaven, I muttered, printing out a fake mining investment proposal. Tomorrow I would deal with Isabella, and then it would be Leo's turn. I lay on the bed as Davis's memories surfaced. Their first kiss at 18, her drunken, I love you, at 22. It was all so staged. The night before he left, she held him and promised to wait forever. Watching these memories made me furious. It was so cringy, I wanted to crawl into a hole. I punched the wall in frustration. Davis was a complete idiot for not seeing how he was being used. The pain in my hand snapped me out of it. I had to make this pay off to compensate for the mental trauma. I messaged my broker to short 50,000 shares of Hayes Group at the opening bell. I watched the moonlight through the window. The next day, I sat in a corner booth at the Peninsula Cafe, stirring my iced coffee. I was in a great mood despite the blinding sun. Isabella arrived 15 minutes late, wearing a loose beige dress with her hair tied back. She had tried to cover her face with makeup, but the dark circles under her eyes gave away her exhaustion. She clearly had not recovered from giving birth. She scanned the room and forced a smile when she saw me. "Davis, have you been waiting long?" she asked sweetly, acting as if everything was normal between us. "Not at all," I said with a faint smile. "You look tired, Isabella." She touched her cheek, her smile faltering. "I've been busy lately." I didn't respond, just took a sip of my coffee and let the silence hang between us. She cleared her throat. "Davis, about yesterday." "What about yesterday?" I asked innocently. She bit her lip. "You know, you saw me and Leo." "Oh, you mean the baby?" I said, nodding as if I had just remembered. "Congratulations on becoming a mother." She was stunned by my composure. The old Davis would have been crying and demanding to know why she lied. "Are you not angry?" she asked tentatively. "Angry?" I laughed. "Why would I be angry, Isabella? You didn't actually think I still loved you, did you?" Her face went pale. "I did a lot of thinking while I was away," I said, shrugging. "I was naive. I thought your kindness was love. Looking back, it was just kids playing house." She gripped her cup so hard her knuckles turned white. "Is that really how you feel?" she asked, her voice shaking. "How else should I feel?" I asked casually. "You are marrying Leo. I can't live in the past forever." She studied me for a long time, trying to see if I was lying. Finally, she relaxed. "I'm glad you feel that way," she said with a relieved smile. "I have always seen you as a brother." "I know." I nodded, quickly changing the subject. "Actually, Isabella, I need a favor." She blinked. "What is it?" I pulled a folder from my bag and slid it toward her. "I studied investing while I was away. I want to start my own firm, but I am short on capital." She frowned at the document. "You need $100,000? "Yes," I said with an apologetic smile. "I know it is a lot. I will sign a contract and pay you back within a year at double the bank's interest rate." She hesitated. "That is a lot of money." "Isabella," I sighed, lowering my voice. "I grew up in your home. Besides your father, you were the only one who really looked after me. I just want to make something of myself, but I have no resources." I looked her in the eye. "Think of it as compensation for everything." Her expression shifted. It was a low blow, but I was counting on her guilt. In the story, Isabella always felt a lingering sense of debt toward Davis, no matter how selfish she was. She had led him on for 10 years, only to treat him like a joke in the end. As expected, she nodded after a few seconds. "Fine, I will lend it to you." I fought back a smirk. I had to stay serious. Laughing now would be too cruel. I really was not a good person. Still, anyone willing to hand over $100,000 could not be all bad. 30 minutes later, the contract was signed and the money was in my account. "Thanks, Isabella," I said, tucking the papers away. "What is the baby's name?" "Joy," she said, her expression softening. "I just want her to be happy." I smiled. In the original story, Davis and Isabella had promised to name their future child Joy. It was such a tired cliché. Usually, the protagonist would be furious that she used their special name. "It is a good name," I said, standing up. "I have to get to the office. There's a lot to do." She looked like she wanted to say more, but she just nodded. I left the cafe and immediately called my broker. "This is Davis Thorne," I said. "Increase the short position on Hayes Group. Give me as much leverage as possible." I looked at the $100,000 in my account and finally let out a quiet laugh. This was just the beginning. 100,000 was nothing in the long run. I immediately started my plan by renting a downtown penthouse and buying a used Mercedes. Then, I registered a shell company for my investments. I invited Leo out for a drink under the guise of a business deal. He looked incredibly guilty when he saw me at the steakhouse. "Davis, when did you get back?" he asked. "A few days ago," I said, pouring him some whiskey. "I heard about the wedding." "Congratulations." Leo shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "I wanted to tell you myself," he stammered. "Don't worry about it," I said, waving him off. "I wanted to talk business." I slid the polished investment proposal across the table. It was a fake mining project with returns that were too good to be true. Leo's eyes lit up with greed. "It is a guaranteed profit," I whispered. "I just don't have enough capital to do it alone, so I wanted to bring you in." Leo hesitated, saying he needed to talk to Isabella. "Whatever," I shrugged. "It is your father-in-law's money anyway." I leaned in closer. "I know all about your creative accounting. Embezzlement is a federal crime, Leo." Leo went pale instantly. What are you talking about? He stammered. I handed him a folder of evidence I had gathered. See for yourself. 30 minutes later, Leo signed the agreement to transfer $1.1 million from the Hayes Group to my firm. Whether he would ever see that money again was another story. For the next month, I played the part of a successful CEO by day and gathered dirt on Isabella and Leo by night. Meanwhile, I kept increasing my short position on the Hayes Group. The company's finances were even worse than I thought. In mid-September, Isabella asked to meet me, looking more exhausted than ever. Davis, she said, biting her lip, can you pay back some of that $100,000? My father is auditing the books and things are getting tense. I acted surprised and asked what was wrong. Some money is missing from the company accounts, she said, looking nervous. Leo says he doesn't know anything about it. I was thrilled, but I kept a straight face. My money is all tied up in the project right now. I leaned in and whispered that I heard Leo had been losing big at the casinos. What? She gasped. It is just a rumor, I said with a sigh. But I heard he was dealing with some heavy hitters in Vegas. Isabella, are you sure he didn't take the money? I asked. Her face went white, and I knew I had planted the seed of doubt. I accidentally left my phone on the table when I left, showing a fake chat between Leo and a casino runner. The entire conversation was a forgery, of course. The next day, my broker called me, screaming with excitement. The Hayes Group is in total chaos. The stock just dropped 15%. I watched my profits soar and told him to keep shorting. The stock was in free fall. I sat in my new office, watching the numbers climb with a massive grin. I was up over $2 million, and I was just getting started. Isabella messaged me again, sounding desperate for an urgent meeting. I made her wait 30 minutes before agreeing to meet at our usual spot. She showed up without makeup, her eyes swollen from crying. She was shaking as she tore a napkin to pieces. Davis, she rasped. Leo, what happened? I asked, acting confused. She grabbed my hand with ice-cold fingers. He took over $2 million from the company. My father found out and is going to the police. I put on my best shocked face and told her Leo would never do that. I didn't believe it either, she stammered, but the evidence is all there. Of course it was. I was the one who sent it to the auditors. Isabella, I said, holding her hand and looking sincere. Do you need my help? She looked at me like I was her last hope. Can you help us? She asked. I will try, I sighed, but I need you to work with me. She nodded eagerly. I showed her a document for a short-term loan from a company called Apex Capital. I told her the interest was high, but it would solve their immediate problems. The loan was from Apex Capital, one of my shell companies, at a 36% interest rate. It was secured by her apartment and her stocks. She signed it without even reading the fine print. Thank you, Davis, she sobbed. I knew you wouldn't let me down. Of course not, I said, smiling as I took the contract. I felt a brief pang of guilt for destroying her life while she thanked me. I was a real piece of work. After a moment of self-reflection, I left the cafe and called my lawyer. Prepare the paperwork, I told him. Once the stock drops another 10%, freeze all of Leo Reed's assets. Business was business, after all. 3 days later, the news broke about the embezzlement, and the stock crashed 22%. My profits hit $4 million. Leo called me that night, sounding furious. You did this, didn't you, Davis? He demanded. I don't know what you mean, Leo, I said calmly. Stop lying, he screamed. You're the only one who knew the details of those transfers. It had to be you. Is that so? I asked. Then maybe you should call the police. He went quiet for a moment before his voice softened. Come on, man, we are friends. Why are you doing this? Friends. I laughed. You thought I didn't know you were sleeping with Isabella the second I left the country? Listen, Leo, I said, cutting him off. You have two choices. Either I show Mr. Hayes your gambling debts and the photos of your mistress in that downtown apartment, or you resign and disappear forever. He was breathing heavily on the other end before calling me a bastard and hanging up. I went back to my computer and looked at all the evidence I had. Hotel bills, embezzlement records, and dirty texts. I had everything ready to send to every wedding guest with a single click. I raised a glass of bourbon to the city skyline. To you both, I toasted. On October 31st, The wedding went on as planned. I stood outside the hotel in a tailored black suit, watching the guests arrive with their gold-embossed invitations. The Hayes family spared no expense, booking an entire five-star hotel for the event. The driveway was packed with luxury cars. "Mr. Thorne, your seat is in the family section," an usher told me. I followed her into the massive ballroom. The ballroom was blindingly opulent, lit by massive crystal chandeliers. A river of fresh flowers led to the stage. The LED screens showed engagement photos of Isabella and Leo looking sickeningly sweet and obviously fake. I was seated near the stage, likely because Mr. Hayes still thought we were all on good terms. "Davis," he called out, waving me over. "Come join us. Everyone is waiting." I sat with Isabella's parents, Leo's family, and some company executives. Isabella had not come out yet, and Leo was by the stage talking to the MC. His smile vanished the moment he saw me. "Mr. Hayes," I said, slipping a small remote into my pocket. "What have you been up to?" "We haven't seen you around lately," he said, patting my shoulder. "Just busy with my new firm," I replied, glancing around the table. Isabella's mother, who usually looked down on me, actually smiled. "I wonder what she was up to." "I heard you started your own business," she said sweetly. "It is so good to see a young man with such ambition." She was staring at the $200,000 Patek Philippe on my wrist. It was much nicer than the watch they had given Leo. "It is just a small project," I said modestly, turning back to Mr. Hayes. "How is the company?" "I heard the stock has been volatile," I said. His smile faded. "Just some minor fluctuations. We have it under control." I nodded. Thanks to my shorting, the company had lost 40% of its value, over $300 million. I knew he was probably losing sleep every night. I felt another brief pang of guilt. Then the music started and the lights dimmed as a spotlight hit the entrance. Isabella appeared on her father's arm, her diamond-encrusted dress shimmering under the lights. She looked perfect, wearing a practiced smile of pure happiness. She was beautiful, and the room erupted in applause. I leaned back and watched the show with cold indifference. Mr. Hayes was about to hand her over to Leo. Just as they were about to touch hands, the doors burst open. "Police! Nobody move!" four officers shouted as they rushed in. The lead detective held up his badge. "Leo Reed, you are under arrest for embezzlement and securities fraud. Come with us." The room went into an uproar. Leo turned white as a sheet, stammering that they had the wrong man. "We have a warrant," the officer said, cutting him off. "You have the right to remain silent." Chaos broke out, and someone stepped on Isabella's dress, nearly knocking her over. Mr. Hayes stood frozen in shock. Guests were gasping and recording everything on their phones. I just sat there, calmly sipping my wine. The wedding was over the moment they led Leo away in handcuffs. Isabella collapsed on the stage, her makeup ruined by tears. Her expensive dress looked like a crumpled piece of paper. Mr. Hayes was on his phone, likely trying to call in favors to fix this. People were whispering and heading for the exits. I stood up, straightened my suit, and walked onto the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said into the microphone, my voice cutting through the noise. "I am sorry to interrupt, but there are a few things you all deserve to know." The room went silent as everyone looked at me. Isabella looked up, her face covered in tears. "Davis, what are you doing?" I gave her a small smile and pressed a button on my remote. The engagement photos were replaced by scanned documents. I showed Leo's illegal transfers, his gambling debts, and photos of him with other women. I even included texts between him and Isabella, showing exactly how they had planned to use me and keep me in the dark. The crowd gasped. "This is just the beginning," I said calmly. "In the last 3 months, Leo Reed has stolen over $4 million from the company. He spent it on gambling and his 3 mistresses." "You are lying," Isabella screamed, standing up. I pressed the button again. The screen showed a photo of Leo kissing a young woman outside a hotel just 2 weeks ago. Isabella went pale. "And as for you, Isabella," I said with mock pity, "you knew exactly who he was and helped him hide it. You even faked a pregnancy to force this wedding." "Shut up," she screamed, lunging at me before security held her back. I played the recording of my last call with Leo. He admitted the baby wasn't even Isabella's, but the result of a surrogate. It was his final plan to secure the Hayes family fortune. Even I was shocked when I found that out. I couldn't understand what Isabella was thinking. The room was deathly silent after the recording finished. Mr. Hayes grabbed a chair to keep from falling. "Isabella, is this true?" he asked. She couldn't speak. She just shook her head as her makeup ran down her face. I turned off the screen and held up a flash drive. "I have all the evidence here. Bank statements, recordings, everything. If any reporters want a copy, come find me." I turned and walked out as Mr. Hayes started screaming and Isabella broke down in tears. The whispers of the guests faded as I stepped outside. The sun was bright, and my phone started buzzing incessantly. The Hayes Group stock was in a free fall. My broker called, his voice shaking. "Mr. Thorne, the stock is down 50%. We have made over $10 million. Close the positions," I told him, "and then start buying everything." "Buy?" he stammered. "You mean right now?" "Exactly," I said, getting into my car. "Buy every share of Hayes stock on the market. I want a controlling interest." I looked at myself in the mirror after hanging up. I looked calm, with just a hint of smile. "Hello, money," I whispered. "Nice to finally meet you." 3 months later, the Wall Street Journal headline read, "Hayes Group acquired in hostile takeover. Mysterious investor Davis Thorne secures 51% control." I sat in the chairman's office on the top floor of the Hayes building, looking out over the city. Mr. Hayes had suffered a stroke from the stress and was still in a hospital. Isabella had a total breakdown after the scandal and was now in a long-term care facility. Leo was serving 7 years in federal prison, learning some new skills the hard way. It was a little lonely at the top, but the profit was incredibly addictive. True rebirth is not about a new body. It is about finally finishing your role in someone else's script. Too many people live like the old Davis, giving everything they have only to be used and discarded. The highest cost is not money. It is the devotion you waste on people who do not care about you. When you stop shining your light on others and use it to illuminate yourself, you realize that the betrayals that once hurt you were just bad moves on a chessboard. Clarity is the ultimate revenge. Building your own empire is the best way to leave the past behind. Stop being a pawn and start being the one who plays the game.